I think a lot of it starts in the recruiting process. Whether it's your staff or your players or anyone that's going to be a part of your program, it's really important to make sure that you're getting the right people in. Every person in your program either strengthens or dilutes the culture, right? And you have one mistake and that can really hurt your team. So yeah, it's super important.
At the field, in your car, or on the couch, get your fast pitch info from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. I'm Ken Kraus, here as always with my good friend and fellow coach extraordinaire, Jay Bolden. Jay, how are we doing today?
Good, Ken. How about you? How things going with you?
Everything's going great with me. Feeling healthy, feeling strong, enjoying life, just overall.
Good stuff. We just got back from Davenport, Iowa last night, so conference play is in full effect, and team is still doing well. So it's an exciting time and also a stressful time because conference play is rolling.
Yeah, I can imagine so. That's going to be challenging for sure. Everybody knows everybody pretty well. Do you find that having some freshmen that you can pull in there gives you a little bit of an X factor that the other teams can't prepare for?
Yeah, I think so. I think, that, and we've had a lot of transfers that have come back, like I said, this year. So a lot of people didn't know, too much about these kids. We just had one of our transfers who came back from a Division I school. She just set the single season record for stolen bases yesterday. She had 4. So she's one to definitely keep your eye out. Again, we have a pitcher that came back as well, too. So a lot of people don't know about these kids, and they are finding out pretty quickly. So it's been a great year so far.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I know that there's so much information out there, so much data and so much video and all that kind of stuff that it can be, it can be challenging. You can't really sneak things by people like you used to.
Nope, not anymore. But yeah, so the season's going well, and play this weekend again. Excited to get that going as well. Hopefully the weather is going to cooperate and be a little warmer. So,
yeah, hopefully, and stay dry as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All righty. Well, let's get on. We're going to bring our guest on. Jay and I are going to have to be on our game today because this week's guest spent more than 6 years as a head coach and academic advisor and 3 years as assistant softball coach in the Ivy League, specifically at Brown University. She has a total of 19 years of coaching experience, mostly at the collegiate level, including stops as head coach and professor of physical education at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York, head softball coach and admissions counselor at Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania, and assistant softball coach at Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina. After playing for 4 years as a pitcher and infielder at the Division I level at Wagner College in Staten Island, New York, where she earned second-team All-Northeast Conference accolades as a utility player in her senior year, she went on to start her coaching career as a graduate assistant at East Stroudsburg University of Pennsylvania before moving on to become an assistant coach at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Her academic pedigree is equally impressive. While at Wagner, she earned a bachelor's degree in business administration and later her master's degree in sports management from East Stroudsburg. Those degrees came in handy when in August of 2024, she made an abrupt career change, leaving the collegiate coaching world to take on a position as sports development representative at OnForm, a software-as-a-service company that offers the leading sports video analysis app and coaching platform. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kate Wheeler to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hi, Kate. It's funny. Every time I write up these intros, I always think, I really need to stop going into such detail and, make it a little bit shorter so we can get right to the guest. But you have such an impressive resume, it's hard to know what to leave out.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
That's great. So we're going to jump right into it. First question we always like to ask is, how'd you get involved with fast pitch softball?
Just like most 5-year-olds, back in the I guess it was late 80s. Geez, I was thinking it was the 90s, but late 80s. I guess the local youth clubs used to mail out information about, the local sports. And I remember just every, few months sitting on the porch with my dad, sitting on the steps, and he'd say, "Hey, do you want to try this?" And I always said yes. So softball, t-ball, I guess it was at the time, was one of them. And yeah, here we are a lot of years later, 36 years later, and still involved in a different capacity now, but still working in the softball world.
Was fast pitch the only sport you played growing up, or was there, were you like a multi-sport athlete? How did you get going with all that?
Yeah, I said yes to everything that my dad kind of threw my way. So I played soccer, I played basketball. Middle school, we didn't have a softball team, so I played lacrosse. I even tried field hockey one year. That didn't go so well. I learned quickly they don't have left-handed sticks, and in some sports I was a lefty. Primarily, I knew that because of street hockey with my neighbors. I was like, "Where's the left-handed stick?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't have them in field hockey." I'm like, "What?" And that's still a thing. So fun
really?
fact there. Yeah, you can only have a right-handed stick at all levels.
Now, do you bat left-handed as well?
I did not. I experimented hitting left-handed in high school. Actually, did pretty well, and then my high school coach said, "Yeah, we're just going to keep you on the right side." But yeah, that was after a game where I think I hit like a single, double, and a triple, and left-handed. I worked on it all winter, and for some reason, he said, "No, we're sticking with the righty." So, but I was soccer and lefty, and lacrosse. I was a lefty, but righty, and some other sports.
Okay. The only reason I asked is that I throw right-handed, but I bat left-handed. And, for the little bit of hockey that I played mostly out on the street, I was left-handed as well. So,
yeah.
So why, you went to Wagner College. Why did you select Wagner?
It's kind of a good question. I was all over the place when I was searching. I actually looked at a lot of D3 schools because I wanted to explore the option of playing soccer and softball in college. And at the D3 level, that was just, much more possible. I really loved soccer. I even, I looked at some D1 schools for softball and kept going back and forth. But at the age I was and always was worried about money, I'm like, I should take where I can go and not have to pay anything. But Wagner was a great fit because I did like the small school environment. The opportunity to play Division I was, obviously something that was really exciting for me. But small school and nice, pretty campus, and then I was actually kind of anti-New York. I grew up outside of Philly and was like, New York sounds scary, but went up there and did a visit anyway, and just thought it was a great fit for me.
So when you were there at Wagner, you also played infield, right? So did you spend more of your time as a pitcher there, or were you fairly balanced and got some, or was it more infield?
If we went back and looked at the stats, I'm sure innings wise, I probably played more infield, but it was fairly balanced. A lot of doubleheaders. I typically pitched the second game of a doubleheader. I was usually, maybe our two pitcher, but I would play the infield, whenever I wasn't pitching. And I'm sure there were days where, I didn't pitch at all and I just played infield. Played second and third. A lot of second, third, a little bit of shortstop. Got a couple games in the outfield. I was that true utility player. But funny story about getting some time at third base. My first conference game freshman year, I had never practiced at third base, never played third base in my entire life. And as coach is reading off the lineup, he says, "And Ref Snyder at the hot corner." Ref Snyder was my maiden name. I'm like, "What? Like, you just made a mistake." He's like, "No, you're going to play third base today." I'm like, who does that to a freshman? You never even practiced me there. But I actually grew to love third base. I was a goalkeeper in soccer. I played midfield and goalkeeper. And that kind of reminded me of being a goalie at third base, just not afraid to get up in their face and make those, crazy instinctual dives and all that. So, ended up really liking it. But I would say, maybe about equal between second, third, and pitching throughout my full 4 years at Wagner.
So, Kate, let me ask you a quick question here. give people a little bit of an idea of like, what was your workload like? Because you did both. You were infield, so you're probably taking infield reps, right? Then did you go throw bullpens? Did you go throw the bullpen first, right? Do all the pitching, the pitching volume of throwing and arms and spins, and then go take infield? Were you staying after practice? What was that like doing both at that level?
Man, Jay, you're making me go back, 20 some years now. But, I do remember just always being very busy. There was times we would come back, come before practice and get the bullpen in, or I love taking infield reps. So going down to the field on, days off, or, just during the day in between class, or, possibly even skipping class just to go get some infield reps. I love field and ground balls. I loved, playing in the outfield just to go out and be an athlete and track balls down. So it's kind of that field rat that most coaches love, just being out there and wanting more reps. But yeah, it wasn't anything that stood out to me because it's what I always did. I always was an infielder and a pitcher. So it wasn't anything new at the college level because I always had to find time to get all, my work in as a hitter, infielder, and pitcher.
I was just going to ask you, though, how'd that first game at third base go? Obviously, it didn't deter you, so must have gone okay.
Yeah. The only thing I really remember from it is being like, where do I go? What do I do? And looking back, I'm like, I knew what to do. I was a pretty smart ball player. I knew I had to field the bunt or cover the base. But I recall our pitcher, she was an upperclassman, really good leader. Name was Crystal Petty. She looked over to me and was like, move up a little, or, let's get your glove down a little more. Just the stance was a little bit different. And it's just reaction time, but just taking feedback from some players that had some more experience. But yeah, like I said, I grew to love it, but that first game probably was more of a blur than anything. Everyone's nervous their first freshman conference game to begin with, right? So throw them at the hot corner and see what happens. Yeah,
you get definitely thrown into the deep end. The other thing about your time at Wagner was that your degree is in business administration. I mean, a lot of folks that end up going into coaching, they take communications or they'll do some kind of physical ed or kinesiology or something like that. You went for business administration and then you went into coaching. How did you get started as a coach? What caused you to kind of go in that direction?
Yeah, I had no interest in coaching. It never even crossed my mind. I actually when I first started at Wagner, I was trying to do pre-vet. Actually, I wanted to work with animals.
Okay.
So really kind of strayed from the path, right? That's why you stay, open-minded about where your path might lead. But I ended up switching over to business. My brother was in the business world and he's like, yeah, it's a great field. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do that. Really did my research there, I guess.
You envisioned yourself as a titan of Wall Street then, huh?
Yeah, totally. No, I was actually more leaning towards athletic administration, and we didn't have sport management at Wagner. It wasn't something that was offered. So I did my internship senior year in our athletic department just to gain some experience, what it was like working in a college athletic department. And truthfully, I had no idea what I was going to do next. I was a senior, getting ready for season. All I cared about was trying to win the Northeast Conference Championship that year. And I got an AOL instant message. To the younger crowd listening, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm sure you guys do.
Oh yeah, I still have an AOL email address. He still has
an AOL email address, so he's well dated.
I actually noticed that. That's impressive. Hopefully you don't pay for it still. I know my mom was paying for it for a long time. And I'm like, Mom, there's free email out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got the instant message. I think it was probably right around the beginning of my senior year season. So probably February, from a coach named Jamie Brown. She was a grad assistant when I was getting recruited to Wagner. So I actually met her on my recruiting trip. And, fast forward 4 years, she is the head coach at East Stroudsburg University. And she says, hey, what are you doing after graduation? I said, I don't know. She said, do you want to come to grad school here and help me coach? And I said, okay. Do you have sport management? Because that's what I want to do. And she said, yeah, we do. And I can get you into it and you can get some experience coaching. But yeah, so that's how I ended up going on to grad school as a grad assistant. Basically, again, just to get my education paid for.
Yeah.
and fell in love with coaching. It was I was working with the pitchers, the infielders, and there was just some key moments that I still remember now 20 years later that I'm like, wow, this is awesome. One of my pitchers, Kristen Halverson, she beat this nationally ranked team in our conference, Shippensburg University. And to her, that was probably the biggest pitching moment of her life. And she ran off the field and hugged me and was just like, thank you so much for getting me to this point. And she was probably a year younger than me. Like, she was a couple, grades below me, but I was very young for my class. So she was maybe a year younger than me. And I was like, wow, like, I just impacted this kid's life. And it was just so cool. And we had a shortstop who the head coach warned me, like, your goal is to get her to dive for a ball. She'd never dove. She's very talented, but would not dive for a ball. And in the game that would send us to the playoffs or not, she actually dove to stop a ball going up the middle. And it was just like the coolest thing. And she, just praised me for getting her to be comfortable doing that. And that's when I started straying from, like, maybe I don't want to be in administration. Maybe I want to coach, because I still was, I was going to do an internship, which I did with the Philadelphia Flyers, their marketing department, and was looking to go into the athletic administration route, and ended up coaching for 18 more years after that year. So.
Wow, very cool. It's funny how life takes you on a journey sometimes and takes you to places that you weren't really planning on going.
Yep, absolutely.
You did 2 tours at Brown University. First, you were an assistant coach there, and then head coach for 6 years after going elsewhere. So how did you end up going back to Brown? How did that all come about?
I was an assistant at Brown for 4 years. Came in with a class and basically left with that same class. And I still talk to most of them to this day. It was a really special time for me, being a top assistant at D1 and kind of learning about the Ivy League. I didn't know anything about the Ivy League, and it's a great conference, but it was hard to leave. It was time. I needed to pay bills a little bit better than being an assistant coach, and it was just time. And an opportunity presented itself in the NESCAC conference, which I have a lot of coaching friends in the NESCAC from recruiting against them and recruiting camps with them. It's another high academic conference. It's a very, very strong Division III conference. Opportunity presented itself at Hamilton College in the NESCAC in upstate New York, and I went and I loved it. I truly loved Hamilton. I thought it was such a great fit for me. But 10 months after I started there, the Brown position opened, and I was torn. I literally was so torn of what to do, because I was very happy at Hamilton, but I missed Rhode Island and the beaches and seeing a little bit more people than I see in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
So really, I just, decided, let me apply, let me see what happens. And up until I went back to campus, I still wasn't sure. But they put me up in a hotel in Providence before my interview, and I was like, oh, I really miss Rhode Island. And taking a chance to be a Division I head coach is something a lot of people aspire to. So ended up coming back and spending quite a bit of time there.
Well, and it's easy to miss Rhode Island because it's so small. You could just make a wrong turn and you wind up, in a whole other state.
Exactly, Ken.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. So how's coaching the Ivy League different from other conferences? Obviously you have a certain academic level that your students have to be able to achieve. So that makes your potential recruiting pool a little bit smaller. But are there other differences as well? Absolutely.
No scholarships. So the Ivy League is expensive. All the schools in the Ivy League are very expensive, and there's no such thing as a scholarship, athletic or academic. So many coaches would come up to me and be like, hey, I have this kid, I know you don't have athletic scholarships, but she's really smart, so she could get an academic scholarship. I'm like, the whole school's really smart, So no, financially.
It's kind of like with an ordinary team where they say, well, she's a good shortstop. Yeah, everybody here was their shortstop in high school.
Exactly.
Everybody here was valedictorian.
Exactly. There's financial aid, that families can qualify for, but really you're recruiting the academic piece, the athletic piece, because you can't just get smart kids. They have to be smart and very talented. It's still Division One softball. And then the financial piece, either families that have saved up and have been planning for this for a very long time, or families that are going to qualify for financial aid. There's a lot of pieces to that recruiting piece to be able to get kids into the Ivy League. And then, truthfully, coaching in the Ivy League has its challenges. Softball isn't always the priority like it is at some other places I was at. When I was at Coastal Carolina, it's like those kids came to play ball. And congrats to Coastal. Actually, they're having a tremendous season. It's been fun following them. But softball isn't always the priority for the athletes in the Ivy League, and it shouldn't be. I always believed academics should be a priority, and that was something that was a really good fit for me at the higher academic institutions I was at. But, not just academics and the rigor of their classes, a lot of STEM students in the Ivy League, but also that peer pressure to build up for their future, whether it's, spending their time doing research or lots of labs and doing internships while they're in season. It's like there's a lot of things going on. And then encouraging them to still have a social life so that they have time to decompress. So in that sense, it's definitely a lot different than a lot of places that I've been at, and then a very different experience from other Division One coaching opportunities.
And maybe you'll agree with me, Kate, too. I think kids that want to go to the Ivy League are looking at the big picture, right? The end of that, like if I'm going to graduate with a degree from Brown, right? I think that's that just opens up doors instead of I'm just going to go play Division I softball and be a good softball player. It's where am I going to be when this is all said and done? With that, having that degree from Brown University or any of those universities in the Ivy League. Would you agree with that they just have their eyes are focused on the bigger picture?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a recruit that matriculated and she's doing really well at Brown this year. But she came to her recruiting visit and told me the percent acceptance to med school, us versus the other Ivies that she was looking at. And I was like, you're 17, 16 years old planning on med school and the percent acceptance rate and why she was really interested in Brown. And, it was very different. A lot of schools, they're like, when I was at Coastal, it was like, how far are we from the beach? Like, what's the social? Like, look at our field, or at Brown, it was, let me see the labs and let me see, the people I can make connections with. And truthfully, the Ivy League kid needs to be confident. There were some really great recruits that had the academic, background for me to support them through our admission process, but they just weren't confident enough in themselves to get that work done and to be able to handle the rigor. It was a good thing they decided not to come to Brown, because you have to be confident in your abilities to do that, because it's a tougher road, for sure.
I would imagine that too. If you're coaching at Brown, like at a lot of schools, you have to set up the study tables and you have to monitor it, make sure kids are going to class and do all those other things. If you're at Brown, you're probably like, hey, take a break for a while. You're spending a little too much time here. You're going to burn out.
Yeah, actually, when I first interviewed at Brown for the assistant position, Katie Flynn was the head coach at the time, and she told me a story of how she contacted Kelly Green, who was the head coach at Coastal when I was there and still is. But she's like, yeah, Kelly kept telling me how great you were at making sure they were in class and going and peeking in the windows and making sure they were in the first two rows and, doing all their study hall and meeting with them on a weekly basis if they're struggling. She's like, she kept going on and on about it, but we don't need to do that here. Like you don't, like they go to class and they study on their own time, and a study hall would actually probably not be that beneficial for them. So it was very, very different than what I had been used to when I first transitioned to the Ivy League.
So let's talk a little bit about your head coaching experience there, and more so about the culture. First of all, how do you feel about culture being important? And then what type of things did you do as a head coach, whether it was at Brown or anywhere else you've been, that focused on culture and having those teams come together? I think we all agree that a team that comes together and plays for each other is just a team that's going to have a really great season. So what are some things you did, Kate, throughout your coaching career?
Jay, it's not just important, it's everything. I don't know if you guys or the listeners are following women's college basketball, but Paige Beckers was just on the Today Show yesterday and talking about how there's all these statements all over social media about, UConn won because of friendship and that they loved each other so much. And she's like, we did. I like, that's absolutely the key. And, culture is everything. And, it's how they show up every day. It's how they handle adversity, how they can trust and treat each other, all the players in the program, plus our staff, right? But also how they can hold each other accountable. Gino Auriemma got in Paige's face in the Final Four, the Elite Eight, and she's the best player in the country, right?
Right.
But she was able to handle that and came out in the second half and was a much better player, and they can hold their teammates accountable. But culture, it's such a buzzword now, Jay, and I think a lot of it starts in the recruiting process. Whether it's your staff or your players or anyone that's going to be a part of your program, it's really important to make sure that you're getting the right people in. Every person in your program either strengthens or dilutes the culture, right? And you have one mistake, and that can really hurt your team. So yeah, it's super important. And then what I would do to strengthen culture, I think every school is different. Just again, some schools really want to buy into being with their team all the time and strengthening that. And other schools, they have different priorities. And sometimes it's like, all right, we have to do this. But I know you have other things, but it's still, you try to make it a priority. But some ways that we would do that is trying to have the athletes take ownership of the program. Creating our team standards, creating our core values together, developing, just an identity as a team and what do we want to be known for. But then having to hold those standards, whether it's teammates upholding each other, or sometimes coaching staffs having to make the decision to leave your best player or players behind for an away conference game because they didn't live up to our standard. And had to do that at multiple schools and never once regretted that. I think that was the best thing for the program that year is, hey, we're not messing around. Like, you have to live up to these standards. But then also like celebrating the intangibles. When you have a roster of 24 and 9 people are on the field, there's 15 not as happy people, right? Like,
right.
It's making sure that they all feel valued and that they're doing a role and we're acknowledging their role, but also, having their teammates acknowledge them. So we would often open it up to, hey, what did you guys see this week? Let's shout each other out for something you did. And sometimes it'd be like, oh, Jazz had so many great picks at first base. But oftentimes it was, hey, JD did an awesome job being my bullpen catcher all week. She made sure I was ready for the game. Or, hey, so-and-so was ready to pinch run every time you needed them. Or, hey, she was the loudest person on the bench for me, and I needed that. And it's just having that, having each other's back and making each other feel important, I think is really crucial. One thing we did for a couple of years was like a teammate of the week. So we'd have our girls vote on who was the teammate of the week and why, and it had to do with our core values. But being able to read those was really cool. It gave the coaches an insight of who's doing what behind the scenes that we don't see. And that was really a meaningful thing within our program. And something else we did last year was brought in a Clifton strengths coach, which she kind of took us through. If you guys are familiar with the Clifton Strengths, I think it used to be called the Gallup Strengths Finder, where we all took sort of like a personality type test. But it really just exemplified what every person's strengths were and how we're all very different. But, it gave better insight to us of why our players might act the way they do sometimes, or why we might be coaching the way we coach, and how some athletes can relate to each other and understand that there's going to be games and days where someone's really struggling, and this is how they look on those days. So it just kind of gave that inside look, because everyone knows each other's strengths on the field, right? Everyone knows who the best bunter is. Everyone knows who has the most power and who throws the hardest and who makes the amazing backhand plays. But we don't always learn about the person. We learn them as an athlete and a teammate in that sense. But to be able to know that, hey, this person isn't angry. She's just very focused when she's on the field. So this Clifton strengths coach really helped us learn about that, and how some people are really rah rah and like want to cheer all the time, where others have to be laser focused. And it doesn't mean they're not involved in the game and they're not bringing their energy. Their energy just looks different. So as coaches, we really loved that exercise that took place over, I think it was 8 weeks during our fall semester, of just really learning each other in a different way.
You're saying that you don't have to coach everybody the same way, that people are individuals on the team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that as coaches, we have to learn over time. And, that you come in as a young coach and you're just like, this is how we do things. And especially nowadays, I think that the differences in athletes really show, and coaches have to be able to adapt to that.
Well, that's very interesting with that. And did you find that as you went to different places that you'd kind of established maybe somewhat of a different culture, or was it pretty much the same from school to school?
I would say it was definitely different depending on the school. The level of commitment from your athletes was different, and I think I had to adapt to that, and again, different priorities at different schools with the type of student athletes that you have within your program. But that I always...
Well, I was just going to say, I was just thinking about Animal House with the professor up there talking about Milton and Paradise Lost, and all the kids are kind of disinterested. And at the end of it, he's going, I'm serious, people. This is my job.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think it's just, you kind of have to adapt to who you're around, but, and also adapt with the times. I mean, coaching's a lot different now than it was 20 years ago when I got into it.
And that brings me to another question. How would you characterize your coaching style? Do you think you were tough, empathetic, command and control, a little combination of all those? And then as you think about it, did that change over the years as you were coaching because of the way the athletes changed?
Funny you ask if I was empathetic. Yeah, that's actually my number one Clifton strength. And that sounds great that it's a strength, right? But
yeah.
As a head coach, I felt like it was not a strength, because I was very empathetic and felt a lot of the feelings for my athletes that weren't playing, because I knew that hurt them. I knew that, they were the best players on their team and they were used to being on the field every day. So it was a challenge for me as a head coach, because that is something that I carry with me, is a lot of empathy for all types of people. And as a head coach, I felt like it was such a negative, just because I, wasn't that strong-willed coach like some of my colleagues that, didn't care what their players thought, or, didn't care that they weren't playing, and, weren't seeing the results as quickly as others. So that's something that's always kind of been with me. And I noticed it more as a head coach when I was making those, final lineup decisions, although I always included my whole staff in those decisions. But I would say I evolved over time. When I was younger, I was definitely like, I set the rules and I'm going to set the goals and we're going to do it my way because it's my program. Where, I guess I turned into more of a democratic style as I grew through my career. And, I got a little bit bigger of a staff, and I wanted all the staff input. And like I mentioned before, having the team input, especially at a program like Brown, where they have so many other priorities. Softball was my life when I was at Brown. I was just a part of their life, and trying to figure out, how we can kind of meet in the middle. So really utilizing what they want out of their experience and stuff like that. So
did you find that helped you with getting buy-in from them, and building the cultures, that if they had input to it, and maybe it was a little easier to hold them accountable since it was their rules, not just your rules?
Yeah, I think so at times. And I think at times it probably would have just been more beneficial if I was like, these are the rules and we're following them and you just listen to me. Because you have a variety of athletes, right? You have some that want that democratic style, and you have some that just want to be told what to do and that are used to being yelled at. And my staff, no one that I ever hired on my staff was a yeller, and some people wanted that. And some people liked that we were more of trying to be encouraging and positive. So, something head coaches out there and future head coaches need to know is like, you're not going to make everyone happy. You're never going to be the perfect coach for anybody. And you just have to find the style that you want and buy into it.
Real quick, I know we're going to fast forward into into your next career move here shortly. But I wanted to ask you a question or get your thoughts on this a little bit. I feel recruiting has changed drastically over the last few years. And you talked about culture. I feel like you have to make sure that you're looking for a player who is also not selfish. I mean, we see all the time on social media, they're posting, all of these speeds, all these home runs, their exit velocity, all of these wonderful things. And they're great players, but then they get to the next level and they realize that they're missing that piece that really, I think, separates really good players from the great players. And that's being unselfish and learning how to do things for others. Is that something that you saw in your time there, that recruiting has changed kind of over the years, and that you really have to make sure that the kids that you're investing in are there for the team, not just for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely, Jay. And just like we mentioned, everyone was the best player on their team, for the most part. And yeah, it's tough because you can't fully learn that until they're there and with you every single day. No matter how much background checking you do, no matter how many coaches you call that have coached them, they're all happy when they're the starting shortstop, right? But when they're not, that's when they're tested. And some of the best athletes that have come through my program were the ones that weren't the best on their team, whether they played at a really high level or maybe they just weren't in a place where they played at a high level and they just never had the good coaching. They didn't have high level coaching. They came to the program, thinking back to when I was an assistant, we had some kids that came in from areas where they just didn't get seen as much. And they were the ones that really appreciated that opportunity and just dove in and were happy to be there and worked hard every single day. But yeah, I think, Jay, the college landscape and NIL and transfer portal, I think that's kind of killing it too, because it's teaching them to be selfish, right? Like, oh, if you're not playing, if you're not happy, jump in the portal. Oh, if you're not, making enough money here, how many, it's not so much in softball, but baseball, basketball, football, guys aren't making a ton of money with an NIL, so they just quit playing in the middle of the season and say, I'm transferring until I get more money. I'm not going to play. And it's kind of creating that selfish environment. And it is changing the landscape so much. And you're not going to know that until the kid's on your campus. And you got to hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah, I can see where that would be very challenging. Especially anytime the money gets involved, that's going to be a real game changer.
Money talks.
Yep. So in August of 2024, as I mentioned in the intro, you made kind of a big career change. You went from coaching to a sports development representative at OnForm. Why'd you make that change, and how's the transition been so far?
Ken, coaching's been really hard the last few years. I would say ever since COVID, especially the Ivy League missed 2 seasons. And everyone was so worried about our athletes, and coaches, you're responsible to make sure your athletes are okay and happy. And, we were struggling. Coaches were struggling and no one checked in on us. I loved being in the Ivy League at that time because at least once a month, all 8 Ivy League softball head coaches hopped on a Zoom just to check in on each other. It was awesome. Like, the sportsmanship in our league was second to none. And I don't know that I would have gotten through those 2 years without the ladies in our league. I still cherish my relationship with all of them to this day, and still following their teams this year, because it was something that was very hard for all of us to get through. And it's just getting harder and harder, like we just talked about, with, the selfishness and entitled. And it's just the landscape of all of college athletics. It's not one school specifically. It's just a changing environment that I wasn't adapting to well. So I was ready for a change. This opportunity presented itself. We actually used OnForm last year at Brown. My hitting coach used it primarily out of all of us, but he used it often. And it was an opportunity to start fresh and have something new, but still related. I work with all of our baseball and softball coaches at OnForm, and I still feel like I'm in the softball world, which is nice. But, I get to be home for dinner every night, and I get to have my weekends to myself and my family. And it's been a very good change for me for this year, at least. Who knows what's to come in the future.
Do you work only with softball, or do you have other sports that you work with as well?
Both diamond sports, so baseball and softball.
Even with the challenges and everything, was there a part of you that, said, my heart's still on the field. It's a little bit difficult to leave the coaching world? Or was it really I was ready for a change at that point?
It was tough. I mean, a little bit, just because it's scary. It's more so scary than anything. And I'm actually in talks with some people I met just virtually or know in person that have also, are in the process of transitioning out of coaching in multiple different sports. When you've done something for 20 years, it's a risk, right? To do something else. I mean, it could have been very easy for me to just apply to any other coaching job. I had other opportunities presented to me, and I just knew in my heart that I needed a break. I needed a mental reset. I needed a physical reset. I needed time for self-care. I mean, that is huge, and a lot of coaches don't take that time. And I just knew it was time. So other than being scared to make a jump and scared to do something new, it wasn't that tough of a decision. Yeah.
So OnForm is, for people who don't have it, is an absolutely great product. It's fantastic. I know Ken uses it. I use it. And I think we both love it. It's just fantastic. What are some of the features that make it unique or special versus other video analysis products? There's so many great things in there, but I want you to tell the listeners and people who are listening to this about what are some of the unique features.
Yeah, you can put your evangelist hat on now.
Absolutely. So I think we as coaches all know that athletes need to see what they're doing. You can't, there's no longer standing there and telling them, hey, you're dropping your back shoulder. Hey, you're losing your posture. They're like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. You could tell them till you're blue in the face, but until they see it. So just the idea of video analysis to begin with is so important now with our athletes, and just the capabilities that are out there. And there's, a whole spectrum of different items that you can use and price points. But with OnForm, it's in your pocket. It's your iPhone. It's your iPad. It's stuff that's just right there. But most apps that are competitors of ours all have the video analysis drawing tool. So everyone can draw lines and circles, and some make it easier than others. And of course, ours is super easy. But the recording features that we have is definitely what sets us apart. Auto detect, being able to set up a phone or an iPad on a tripod and just automatically cut every swing. Most of us don't have a staff of, let's say all the top 10 Division I programs have, 12 people on staff and have someone that can record everything and the budget to do so with high speed cameras. But we can just set it up and automatically detects any swing and cuts it. And it's tagged as the athlete, and it gets sent right over to their phone so they can watch it later. But auto detect is a really great feature. The ability to do multicam, which is, adding an iPhone and an iPad from two different angles and have a side-by-side comparison of the same exact swing. Just, again, two devices you have in your backpack when you walk down to the field, being able to connect them and do that. And then our shutter speed adjustments. In our sport, at contact, you get a lot of motion blur. At, a pitcher's release, you get a lot of motion blur. We can adjust our shutter speed, and you can't do that with just your regular iPhone camera, which I used to always film, pictures just with my iPhone, and then they just sat there and took up storage in my phone, where OnForm, everything's stored up in the cloud, but it'd be blurry at contact. Couldn't really see anything. Something I really love doing is overlaying videos, which OnForm does and makes it very easy, especially for pitchers. I mean, that pitch tunneling view, and I've showed a lot of coaches the ability to do an offset overlay, really see and pinpoint where a pitcher is tipping a pitch. But then, the whole thing started last year when my assistant found OnForm, came in, said, I need this. And I said, what is the price? Because I have to worry about the budget, right? And he told me the price, and I was like, that's less than a bat. And it's for the entire year for everybody. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it. To me, that was a no-brainer. We're going to spend $400 or $500 on a bat that might make one player a little bit better, where we can spend less than $300 and make the whole team better instantaneously, that player development piece. But there's just some really great features on OnForm, and we just do things very seamlessly.
Well, I have to share that when I first started using video, it was a production. So I'd have to bring in my video camera and my laptop, and I'd have to set it up on a tripod and run back and forth. Then we would look at it. But, it was the kind of thing you didn't use day to day. It was like, okay, today is video day, and I'm going to video all the kids here so that I can show them what they're doing. And then after that, I got this little Kodak camera that was a pocket-sized video camera, and it had a screen that was about an inch wide and an inch high. And that was like a tremendous innovation to me because I could now hold it and I could do video whenever I wanted. But when it started moving on to the iPhones and the Androids and all of that, now it's a device that's in your pocket. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to remember to charge it and all. So, that part of it alone was great. I've used a couple of different products for that. It's not just because you're here, Kate, but I would honestly say OnForm is the best product that I'd come across. And again, the drawing features were all the same. But one of the best parts to me was the ability that it would automatically, I guess it's not really automatic. You have to set it up. But every kid had their own folder. When I was using a previous product, all my videos just kind of were there and they were a big jumble. It was like taking a bunch of papers with data about your kids and throwing them onto a desk and then having to sort through and try to find them. You could tag them, but then that was an extra step. With OnForm, if I want to go look at KDO, I can just look at KDO, go right to her folder, put stuff in there and find that, go back through her history, say, here, this is what you were doing 6 months ago. This is what you're doing now and all of that. So I can't sing the praises of the product enough. And then talk a little bit about the communication aspect of it as well.
Yeah. So, every athlete gets the app for free. I mean, you get unlimited athletes. So whether you're a coach, a private instructor, you coach a high school team, a million travel teams, whatever it is, every athlete that you coach gets the app for free with your subscription. But they all get the app. They can record themselves using all those same recording features that I mentioned, and then send you a video of themselves from anywhere in the world. And
how do they get that? How do they get that app for free?
Yeah. So when you buy a subscription as a coach and you send them an invite, you give them an invite code and our system knows that they're connected to a paid coach. So they automatically just get an account. It's very simple. Just like connecting with someone on Instagram. You basically, if both of you have the app, you just send an invite and then you're friends. And that's how it works with us as well. Seamless communication. There's a chat feature. There's, for teams, there's a group chat feature, or you can make different groups by position or what you want them working on. You can send them drills through there. But then, the athletes can get voiceovers from you post-practice. So maybe all practice, coach was saying, hey, you're dropping your back shoulder. And then after practice, they can go find that video and send it to you. And as my coach, I always teased last year, my assistant would be like, hi, this is Coach Mark. I'm like, Mark, they know who you are. But he would run their video and be able to draw a line and be like, hey, Susie, this is where I was talking about. Look at this backside right here. You're losing your posture, and be able to point that out just in the voiceover. And
that damn Susie, she's always losing her posture.
Yeah, she is.
It's funny how we all pick that name.
It's an easy one.
So, Kate, I got a question for you, and I missed the Pauly Zoom, but definitely going to watch that. Is there a way, and maybe I'm missing it, is there a way to screen share that to a TV that I have in my facility with OnForm? Do you know?
Absolutely. So, if you have an Apple TV or anything that you can screen mirror, a lot of the the newer TVs, you can easily screen mirror that up. So especially in auto detect mode, auto detect works for swings, as I mentioned earlier, but also works for baseball pitching. We're getting there for softball pitching eventually, I promise. But it plays it back automatically. So if you have a kid in a cage, you can set up that auto detect and then have it screen mirrored up to your TV. Or if you don't have a newer TV and you just connect a cord, it'll show right up on the screen. But a kid will take a swing, it's going to play it back. You and him or her can turn, watch the swing on the big TV, give some coaching points, and then as soon as they're ready to swing again, it's automatically going to detect that next swing. But yeah, that's a feature that a lot of people use, especially like indoor facilities or just any sort of, one-on-one training type situations.
So in addition to evangelizing the product to coaches and all of that, is part of your job to kind of take the input, the things that you're hearing from different people and bring it back to the product development team?
Oh, absolutely. We're such a small company that we're all on, chats every day, all day. And my job isn't, it's sales technically, I guess, but as a sport development representative for OnForm, that means that I'm trying to build up our product to be great for baseball and softball. Whether that's getting new clients, making sure people are aware of our product, but also how is this product going to be best for baseball and softball coaches? One of my first days, I got to meet with Gear Fisher. He's our co-founder. And I just straight up said to him, like, why doesn't auto detect work for softball? It's the same swing, because we had it for baseball. And he's like, oh, if you sign up as a baseball coach, you have auto detect and it works for pitching and hitting, but it didn't work for softball. So what they did was tell people, oh, if you want that, sign up as a baseball coach. It's like, no, like they're a softball coach, right?
Right.
So that was, kind of day one. I was like, we need to change this. Like, it needs to work for softball too. And like, well, we didn't want them to be upset that we didn't have it for pitching yet. I'm like, well, they're probably more upset they can't use it for hitting, since it is a feature. So we got that going. We turned that on, within a couple days, they got that turned on for softball. And I was so excited. I told all the softball coaches, like, go do this now, use the auto detect. It's an awesome feature. But we have a thread on our Slack, which it's just our messaging communication. We're a remote company, so we're all over the place. So something called Voice of Customer, where every day there's people putting in their, whether it's our support team or our other salespeople, just suggestions they've heard from their customers. And then we meet as a company once a week and go over all of those suggestions that we got each week. And the innovative part of OnForm is what I think stands out. There's other companies out there with good products, but they're not continually developing like we are. And if they are trying to develop, they're not setting, themselves up against a standard. They're just kind of throwing features out there without testing them properly. And that's something our company would never do. We want to make sure when we release something, we're releasing it right and earning the trust of our customers. But we are always talking about how to improve it, and then just people testing it to make sure before we do an upgrade or an update to our app that we're releasing the right things.
Kate, what are some things that we should look for coming up that are new from OnForm, or things that are getting ready to come out, or things that are coming out in the future?
Yeah, so we just released some new administrative tools, which kind of gives the owner of the account more authority over what's going on in their account by being able to add staff members, manage staff members, being able to assign players to different staff members, where it used to just be like, Ken has his account, Jay has his account, Kate has her account, and everyone just has their own players, and you have to invite everyone separately. Well, now the owner of the account can just kind of send out invitations and assign a coach to them or assign multiple coaches to them. So kind of the back end stuff that's going to make things a lot easier and just more cohesive. But we also just came out with 3D for golf. So you record in auto detect a golf swing, which golf is our biggest clientele, followed right behind by baseball and softball. But you record the golf swing in auto detect, and then a 3D avatar pops up. A very well tested 3D avatar. This took a very long time to make sure we released it properly, but you can spin that avatar all the way around. You can go from a top view. You can get all different angles of this 3D golf swing. And now we are working on getting that ready for baseball and softball. So we wanted to perfect golf first. Softball's coming, very soon. So that's going to be really cool. And then there is, just little things like extra reference content folders, and something that a lot of coaches are asking for, and we just talked about in our team meeting yesterday, is being able to get some reference content of baseball and softball example swings. So some of the best swings and pitches out there in both of our sports, to be able to bring in as, something you can do side-by-side comparisons to, or coaches can learn from. It's just a matter of getting the athletes to agree to that, but we all know they want NIL type money for that. So we're trying though, because we do have that in the golf landscape, but we're trying to get it for the diamond sports.
Yeah, that's something that I remember RVP used to have, and that was a nice thing for you guys. That could be a revenue stream too, because I remember you had to buy the packages, for like $2.99 or something. You could get this player, this player, this player, and this player, and then you could put that in side by side with your players and kind of give them an example. So that would be really cool. That's one thing. What I do right now with that is I basically sit and watch my TV, and then I hope that they're going to give me the view I want to get of the player I want to get. And then I'll pop up my iPhone and shoot a, crappy video on something like that. And, it's got all the graphics and all that other stuff going on. So that would be great if you guys could do that.
Yeah, we're definitely looking into it, and I'll throw out the idea of paying for it too. But I think we just want to provide it. I know we provide it for golf coaches now. We're trying to make this the best product out there, and just have the most coaches using it. One last thing that I'm going to kind of tease out of a new feature coming is we're in the testing and development phase with integration with a tool that most of you coaches already have in your pocket. So we'll give that as the tease right there. Something you're carrying around in your pocket that we're going to integrate and hopefully have out for you this summer. So
that's something that's on your radar, so to speak.
Exactly, Ken.
One of the other tools that I just love, and I actually found it accidentally the first time I used it, was the skeleton tool. It was funny because I was trying to show a video to a kid one day, and all of a sudden all these lines pop up over her. And I'm like, where did that come from? It had been out for like 2 days, I think, and it hadn't even gone up on the blog yet. And, then I was like, okay, now I have this thing on here. How do I get rid of it so I can just see the clear thing? Seeing that come up, and then the ability to measure the angles. As a pitching coach, I use that all the time. That elbow bend coming in to release is so important. And I can look at that with the kid and say, okay, here, look at how you're turning your shoulder forward. As soon as that happens, it's pulling the bend out of there. Or sometimes I'll be telling the kid, yeah, your arm looks a little straight to me. Let's take a look. And all of a sudden I look and they have 20 degrees of bend. It's just not showing, naked eye in the video. And it's like, oh, I guess I can leave you alone then. You're actually doing pretty well.
Great point, Ken. Yeah, there's so many features that I could sit and talk about forever. And I love hopping on demos and showing people the app. It's hard to really picture it over a podcast, but that's my favorite part of the day is just getting on with coaches and showing them. But yeah, the skeleton tracker, it's awesome. And we actually just updated it. I'm not sure if you've noticed the difference in the last few weeks, but there would be times where it was a little bit jumpy and still, I would say better than some of our competitors out there. But, we would lose it, on a swing, maybe, their front hand went behind their head at the end of the swing. Mm-hmm. And we would lose that skeleton, but now it stays on it perfectly. It's super, smart, and it stays right on the athlete now, no matter what is happening with their motion, whether it's fielding, hitting, pitching, anything. So big upgrade there. Our development team is just incredible.
One other thing I want to ask so people might be listening to this that aren't using OnForm yet, and they're thinking, oh, I might want to try that, but I don't know if I want to make a big commitment yet. Is there a demo version or something where they would just be able to try it with an athlete or two?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we're primarily just iOS based for coaches. We are working on an Android version, but all they have to do is go to the App Store, the Apple App Store, download it, and you get a free 2-week trial. It's full access. We give you every feature for 14 straight days, where you can add all of your athletes to it. You can, add as many videos as you want, and then we don't sneakily charge you at the end of 2 weeks. I know a lot of coaches are worried about that. Anything you get on the App Store, you're like, oh, it's going to charge me. And we don't automatically subscribe you or anything, but it is, you get some emails from us with some onboarding and how to use stuff. There's always options to schedule demos with me or a member of our support team. Yeah, at the end of your 14 days, we alert you, hey, your trial's running out. Do you want to subscribe? And then whatever you did during your trial, once you subscribe, it's still all going to be in there. You're not going to have to start over with, a new subscription or anything. All of your athletes and videos would still be right in there.
And that's great too, that it kind of brings it up to there. Cause I know I hate that with the apps where you do a 14-day trial and you're like, you know what? I don't really want to spend the money right now. And then you try to figure out how to stop it. And turns out it's like Indiana Jones looking for the Holy Grail. It's all these little Byzantine types of paths you have to follow and some obscure URL you have to get to in order to unsubscribe. So if you make that easy, that, again, that's part of the customer service, I think.
Absolutely. And we've gotten so many just compliments about our customer service. I think that's, we have a very high rating on the App Store, I think 4.8, and our product is tremendous, but so many people talk about the support we offer too. I mean, we have a whole team that is here to support you, and sports specifically, that's me, but anything more technical, we have a team that really can dive into the back end of stuff that's way above my head. But we're here to help out for sure.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that as well. I don't know if Jay's used it at all, but I've used customer service, ask them questions, and I'll ask them my stupid questions. And within 24 hours, I'll get a really nice answer that solves a problem. It's probably one of the best customer service organizations that I've ever dealt with. It's certainly in the softball world.
Yes,
Jay, what
absolutely.
about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys are hands-on. That's the best part about it. So you get your questions answered. People help you out all the way through and through. So it's a great product. Kate, is there a place people can go and maybe there's some example videos that they can see? Maybe it's on social media or the website. Is there, whoever's listening, could you give them some directions how to get to where they need to go to just check out some examples, even if it's just a video?
Yeah, so we have social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, but we have a YouTube page, and that's where a lot of our like blogs are, our interviews, but a lot of our our tutorial videos. So when I do a demo with someone, I show them how to use everything, but then I also point them to our YouTube page where you can go and see how to connect to your multicam so that you can connect your iPad and your iPhone, and how to do an overlay, and how to add students. We've made it pretty simple, and when they're still not simple enough for somebody, then we're just hands-on and we want to get on the phone or a Zoom call and answer it with you while you're playing on your app. But yeah, the YouTube page is definitely a good spot to kind of see everything it does. But then we have a great marketing team that would love for you to check out our Instagram and our Twitter pages.
All right. So last question for you. We appreciate all the time you've given us and, taking time out of your day and without getting you in trouble with your on-form overlords. Do you think there's a chance you'd ever go back to coaching and, not even necessarily at the collegiate level, maybe at the youth level or a high school or something like that? Is that something that you think might be a possibility someday?
I wouldn't be surprised, Ken. Asked me this 6 months ago and I was like, nope, not doing it. After talking to so many coaches that are like, how are you doing? I saw them at NFCA convention, all my coaching friends, and I'm like, I'm good. I'm so good. And they're like, you look happy. I'm like, I am. And so many coaches pulled me aside and just were like, I'm kind of jealous that you had the strength to kind of get out of coaching and try something new. Because I think a lot of coaches are in that predicament right now of just not loving it the way they used to, just the way things have changed. I won't say names, but there's a lot of them out there that before it was like, oh yes, I'm having a great fall season. I love it. We're so excited for spring. Everyone puts on that front. But this year I noticed people able to be a little more honest with me. I can't say I won't ever coach again. I'm not sure. I'm not itching right now to get back to it, but I've had some offers to coach some 10U, which would be totally new to me. I had some coaches knocking down my door basically to come be a pitching coach for a local school, a local D3 school. And man, I was really tempted to do it. But I promised my wife one spring and one summer of not coaching. And I think that, it's a promise to myself too, just to have this mental reset and be able to, like I said, self-care and get back to the gym and make dinner every night. And when I was at that 10U tryout that I helped out with, just to help out, I had so much fun, helping the pitchers and, kind of just seeing, their future of wow, some of them have so much potential. And that was so fun for me. And then I went and watched a D3 game and just to get some stuff for OnForm, just some footage to use on my demos. I was filming a bullpen before the game, a kid warming up, and it was taking all of me not to just start being like, hey, snap here a little bit harder, and it was a beautiful sunny degree day. So, it was awesome. But then the last week up here in Rhode Island, it's been freezing and rainy and cold. And I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not out on the field right now. But I will give a shout out to my former assistant and my good friend, Mark. I'm having dinner with him tonight, but we've talked a few times now about maybe a high school team together is going to be the right fit, just us coach together again and do something local where it's not taking up our whole year and we can still have time with our families, but, at least be on the field for a few months. So we'll see. To be determined, Ken and Jay.
Okay. And you still get the fun of dealing with parents and all of that stuff. So,
oh yeah, that's always the best part, right?
Kate, I want to ask you just one more question, if you don't mind. What would be some advice you would give to some newer coaches as they begin their coaching career, whether that's at a high school level or even at the collegiate level? What would be some advice that you would give to some up and coming coaches or coaches who are just about to start their journey at any level?
Communication is huge, whether it's with your team, with your administrator, with other coaches. You cannot over communicate. That's one thing. And just, building a relationship and having administrators that want to support you is huge. That is one of the most important things to be able to have longevity in this career. To not be, I would say I was kind of shy. I was very shy as a kid. And when I started coaching, I was still kind of shy and wouldn't walk up to another coach and be like, hey, can I, pick your brain a little bit? That would have been the best thing for me to do. And I think any young coach getting into coaching, use your resources. So many of us coaches want to help people and help them get into this field and help them grow in this field. But I just didn't do that enough. I wish I would have. And I think that would probably be my biggest advice is use your resources. In our world of softball, the NFCA is tremendous. Get involved as much as you can. I went to as many conventions as I could, but I didn't make as many connections as other coaches have. And I think that is amazing for the coaches that can do that. For sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Kate, we really thank you for all the time you've given us today. I know that you're a busy person and you've got many things going on. So to spend an hour or so with us is really appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. It was great hanging out with you guys.
All right. Well, everybody, that's it for us today on the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. We appreciate everyone listening. We hope you found some good, valuable information as we went along. Be sure to like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. There's good information out here. As Kate was talking about, learning from other people, help other folks learn some of these things and pass the word along. Leave us a like on Apple Podcasts. That always helps as well. And we'll try to continue to grow all of this. So on behalf of Jay and myself, we wish you all the best and look forward to talking to you again.